Gideon always manages expectations, and he said to me, Matt, it's going to be a smaller crowd today. We're getting a lot of calls about watching it on the live stream. And look, if Skubik's here, David Eggert, Kyle, the top brass at MERS, it's good. One of these days we're going to get Gorchow. I can just feel it. You could bring him. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen Gorchow in person. I don't know. Well, I've been watching all your coverage about the food banks and the great work that Governor Whitmer and I did to put $4.5 million into the food banks to ensure that people don't go hungry during this time of uncertainty. And I've watched the coverage and I read some of the stories, and I just felt like the press corps could benefit from an opportunity to hear from somebody that I've been partnering with and the governor's been partnering with from the Food Bank Council of Michigan, their executive director, Dr. Phil Knight. So you want to come up, Dr. Knight, and give everyone an update on the work that you've been doing, your organization, and the partnership with the governor and I, and the results, because I think we could all benefit from that. So, and then I just want to clarify. I'm going to let him talk. Him and I will take questions. Let's keep the scope of the questions to this, and then we'll do the more after. I just don't. He's not here to endorse some of the later things that I say. But I did want to. So we'll just keep it to him, and I can weigh in, and then once he leaves, we'll get back to the usual that you guys like. All right. So go ahead. Great, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, thanks for having me.
Great.
Well, good morning. I'm honored to stand here on behalf of the Food Bank Council of Michigan and our statewide network of 7 food banks and more than 2,500 different pantries that serve all of Michigan's 83 counties. Together we exist for one simple reason, and that's to come alongside our neighbors, friends, and family who are living under the toxic stress of being food insecure. And I want to begin with gratitude. You can always tell who your friends are because your friends walk in when the rest of the world walks out. And when those who control the SNAP program walked out, leaving a gap that a charity alone could never fill, Speaker Matt Hall, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and members of the legislature stepped up to provide quickly $4.5 million in emergency support so that no Michigander could face this moment alone. This investment is designed to have impact over a 2-week period, presenting roughly 6 million meals moving through our community channels, food for families, seniors, children at a time when they need it most. But it is important to define reality. We find ourselves faced in an impossible task. Replacing, even temporarily, a federally backed food assistance program like SNAP is impossible. But the Charitable Food Network was built to supplement, not substitute. For every meal we share, SNAP creates up to 9. So you can see it's simply impossible to unplug SNAP and plug in the Charitable Food Network. The math doesn't work for families or for the economy. But let me also define a little bit of strength. Here in Michigan, our network of 7 food banks is part of Feeding America, the national network, the national food bank. And you may not know that Feeding America is the United States' largest charity. Now, you've never seen a press release about that because we're not proud of that. We've surpassed even United Way in our size, and together these 200 food banks collectively serve every county in the United States. We own and operate across this network more trucks, more semis than Walmart. That's the scope of this challenge called food insecurity. And we're good, but we're not that good. But no one is. Yet in the face of this impossible, we're always done what we do. We act together. We do as much as humanly possible. And with the support of the Speaker, the Governor, and other leaders, community partners, thousands of volunteers, our network mobilized within hours. We've expanded distribution through every channel, mobile pantries, agency partners, direct community distributions to make sure food reaches where it's needed. We've also diversified how we reach people by partnering with organizations that already serve specific populations like senior centers, disability networks, schools, and other local nonprofits. In an average year, Michigan food banks will distribute between 160 and 240 million pounds of food. That's between 3,600 and 5,500 different semi-loads. Michigan-grown products is at the base of this work. So more than half of what we distribute is fresh, and this emergency funding is helping to buy Michigan-made products and putting them on Michigan tables. We are seeing an increase of participation at our distribution. Many of the people affected by the SNAP pause and now reduced benefits that we hear will restart soon. Everything that collectively we can do to solve this challenge. But then, when we finally do come together, when people do come to the distribution, they are met with dignity, kindness, and most importantly, food. The $4.5 million investment that our network represents what our network could responsibly handle over a 2-week period. It does not represent the scale of the problem, but it does represent what we could do together immediately, what we could do efficiently, and always with food safety as our highest value. Edmund Burke once said, "Nobody ever made a greater mistake than when they decided to do nothing because they thought they could only do a little." And what we're doing together may seem like a little in the grand scope of things, but if you go to a food distribution and watch a family pick up fresh produce, dairy, milk, cheese, and lean protein, you'll see that it does make a difference. And we're not going to make that mistake. We're going to do what we can do, trying to do more, striving to do better every single day. And this adversity has arrived at our door. None of us asked for it, but with the leadership of the governor, the Speaker of the House, and others who've helped marshal these resources, Michigan is once again proving that we can make a difference when we come together. So for us, we'll keep the trucks rolling, we'll keep the volunteers packing, and we'll keep the partnership strong, because we know hunger doesn't wait, but neither do we. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, yeah. And like he said, I mean, we've funded what they can do for 2 weeks. We're going to get a report from him about how it worked, what his recommendations are of the Food Bank Council. We're going to look at that as we go week to week to ensure that that we meet the need. And so as those recommendations come in, we're going to look at the work, the job they did to get the food out and get it out safely, what the demand is, and how they think they can scale up. And we're going to continue to monitor that with the governor and support the efforts as long as they're working. And you know, we partnered with your organization during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they did a great job. We picked the right partner to help us solve this problem, and you got a lot of meals out already,
Yes.
haven't you? Do you want to tell them
Sure.
how many you got out?
Yeah, so the way food banking works is, so I took someone to one of my food banks recently, and they walked in and they looked at the racks of food and they thought, wow, this looks like Costco. And it does, except we turn our warehouse over a lot faster than Costco does. And so this, again, the 4.5 million with everything that's involved will represent 6 million meals. What we've done before even anything started, once we heard about SNAP, we started, our food bank started buying more food on their own. And presently, food banks in Michigan buy 5 times more food right now than what they did in 2019 prior to the pandemic. And just like everybody else, we face inflation, and so we get less food for more money. And so donated product is a huge part, and Michigan farmers are often the ones who come alongside of us to do that. So I think you can look at 6 million meals every time that we have to do this partnership, and we pray that we don't have to do it very long, so that the federal government opens and we're able to go back to semi-normal.
Great.
Thank you.
And they're high quality, right? Very high quality.
Very high. I
Yeah,
think you'd be
they are.
very pleased with
Yeah.
the types of food
Yeah.
that we're distributing.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Along this monthly line, how much would you need to feed the people that are coming through your doors?
If I understood the question right, and I'm a little deaf, so sorry. If you're asking me how much would we need to meet the entire need, it's not possible. You can't scale charity to replace this program. So to start from that premise is even as large as our network is nationally, even here in Michigan, it's impossible to scale that. It would require such an investment in infrastructure to support that. I mean, we already have more trucks on the road than Walmart, so I don't see how we could even scale to half that need. So.
4.5 million will not solve the problem. When will we be back to the speaker asking for more money? In 2 weeks?
Yes, again, I'm not hearing you really good, but
How long will the 4.5 million last?
yes, great, thank you. So we're designed to get that out within 2 weeks, in a 2-week time frame, and then reevaluate with what the situation is in Washington, D.C. on whether the government's opened or not.
And can you talk about?
$4.5 million for every 2 weeks as long as you can. Would you take that money if you could?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then can you tell them about the report that you're giving us?
Yeah. So we'll be furnishing a report probably the middle, I think it's the 12th or the middle of next week, to the governor's office and to the speaker's office that illustrates how this food came to be, where we got it from, what it represents in the number of meals, the quality, the types of food. Like I said, well, I know Gleaners community food bank down in Detroit ordered 2 semis of lean ground beef, 90-10 ground beef, and that was probably a total of $220,000. But it's the food people both want, and particularly the food that people need. So.
Yeah, so I think the way I would answer your question is we're going to get the report from him. You said when, the middle of next week?
Yes, sir.
Then I'll get with the governor. We'll assess what's going on at the federal level, and then we'll look at his report, and then we'll potentially give him more money based on what his recommendation is in that report at the middle of next week. And we're going to take this from week to week, working with the governor to assess the need and then determine how much money is needed. And, depending on how long it goes, if he comes to us and says, look, we may need to scale up, we'll consider that. But at this time, they're not scaling up. Some of the SNAP benefits are coming back. We're seeing reports that, in the next few days, the SNAP cards are going to be partially refilled in Michigan. That should reduce some of the demand, and so we'll factor that in along with his report on what we need to do from week to week.
Speaker, just theoretically speaking, do you believe it is the government's role to make sure people who can't afford food are fed, or is that better suited for charity? Just theoretically speaking.
Well, in this case, we didn't seek to, in consultation with the governor, we didn't seek to replace all the benefits that are lost as a result of the federal shutdown. And right now you're only talking about SNAP, but there's a lot of others. There's LIHEAP, which addresses low-income utility bills. There's WIC. There's a lot of other ones. And so, we're looking at potentially over $500 million that it would cost the state to backfill all of these programs through the end of the year. And with our budget situation, I think what we're looking at here is supporting where we can. You see some of the federal benefits coming back. Fortunately, President Trump and his administration are providing more funding for WIC. I believe it goes through December 19th, which is a good thing, and we're grateful to President Trump for that. So some of these holes are being plugged, but it's still a very expensive proposition for the state to fund all this. We have a proven track record of working with the Food Bank Council, with Dr. Knight. It went on during the pandemic, and we're re-engaging that partnership and supporting his efforts and then relying on his recommendations. And that's what we're doing because we don't want people to be hungry. We don't want people to starve during this difficult time. But we need also realistic solutions, and Dr. Knight pointed out, the 4.5 was how we could do this immediately and address it. The 4.5 million was how we could address it immediately. We had a partner that was ready to go, and so we worked with the governor to get it done.
But idealistically, though, is it the government's job to do WIC, to do SNAP, to do these kind of programs, or should it be somebody else who does this?
Well, the programs are in existence, and people are in reliance on the programs, and so what we're trying to do, because we got a state budget done, we worked with Governor Whitmer, Republicans and Governor Whitmer, we got this done, we decided that we could help organizations like the food bank to deal with the need, because people are expecting these benefits. There's a disruption in the benefits because of the chaos at the federal level. So we're stepping in to do what is available to meet the emergency need. And now you see some of those SNAP benefits are coming back, which is really going to help. Yeah.
So obviously we're talking about this $4 million plus amount that's going now, but realistically, how much money does the state have to spare in order to continue helping fill the gap left by these lack of federal benefits?
So, when we did this deal with the governor, keeping government open at the state level, something that the federal government should really look at. Maybe they should consult with me and Governor Whitmer on how to do this at the federal level, but we did it at the state level. One thing that we put in the budget was a fund that is for food for our food system and our SNAP system. And essentially, we put that in there. We funded it at 30 million. And one of the uses for that would be this purpose. So we spent the first 4.5 million out of that here. And then as the need is addressed, we could look at legislative transfers and other things to do to get the money there to do it. So, but the initial pot that we have available is 30 million. It was a fund we created for the food program and to ensure that it's viable, both that we're lowering the error rate and also that we have the resources available to feed people. And we're tapping from that now. So we spent 4.5, but we worked with the governor because she wanted to make sure she had the backing that this was a good use of this fund. It was a brand new fund we created. And we agreed it's a good use, and we'll continue to support her using it as long as we have the report and we're getting results. And then we can look at potential legislative transfers as needed to add to that line. That's another reason she really needs the partnership. Yeah, Elena.
Dr. Knight, you could speak a little bit to the need right now. I would imagine that with SNAP temporarily out of the picture, more people are relying on food banks than typically would be. And does that mean you're going through your supply of resources faster?
Yeah, so it's taken a lot of innovation here. I understood yesterday that somewhere around 30 to 50% increase the food banks are seeing at distributions. So it's not overrun, but and that's a good thing, because one of the things I think we probably miss about the population that's struggling with a little bit more month than money is that they're very resilient. They're trying to solve this problem on their own first. So they're turning inward to themselves, to their family, whatever, and then they turn out to find resources like ours. So I think a good estimate would be between 30 and 50% increase right now. But we are moving toward the holidays. And so we're always experience a bit of an increase as we move through the first of the year.
Back off of that, because especially in places like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, they rely pretty heavily on some of the Feeding America mobile food pantries. But I mean, I'm looking at the forecast here. We've got a high of 33 degrees this weekend up north already. So, compounding that we're heading into the winter, what are some of the impacts you're looking at of like getting food to rural communities in particular that usually rely on this mobile model?
Yeah, so we tried to be really thoughtful about this and look at, MDHHS has a SNAP utilization map. And so we've really tried to target the food banks that serve in those areas of the state. But the hard truth is SNAP is used in every county, right? So 43% of the people who are facing food insecurity in Michigan live in Southeast. And so that's a lot of folks. But people who live in the lower mitten, maybe the population density isn't as much, but they're just as hungry. So we try to be very equitable in that, but also try to use as much data as we can to make sure that the food is going to the places where it's needed. So.
For Speaker Hall, would you support the state picking up the bill to pay the other 50% of SNAP benefits that are not being paid by the federal government?
What we support is what we've done, which is moving money to the Food Bank Council of Michigan so that they can get the resources needed to all of the food banks across the state. And we're seeing results from that, which Dr. Knight talked about here today. Paying over 6,000, we paid out over 6 million meals. We saw many false media reports about the impact of this. And that's why we're clarifying. This was over 6 million meals that went out all over the state. I think Dr. Knight talked about the scale of this and how it's larger than Walmart and the things that they're doing here, where they're really able to distribute this immediately across the state and meet a very important need for many people. We see that some of the SNAP benefits are going to be coming back. People are going to start seeing their cards reloaded in the next few days. They're going to have some benefit from that. And then, you know, the food banks are also available to ensure that nobody goes hungry. But again, our budget for this is the $30 million that we funded in the budget for these kind of things. If we seek to start replacing all of the federal government services that are gone during this shutdown, we're going to start running out of money very fast. And so, you know, we mentioned it's going to be over $500 million projected to fix all of these programs that are defunded through the end of the year. So if we said right now we're going to fund every single program that's going away, we're estimating it's over $500 million to backfill, and there's no guarantee that the state is going to be reimbursed for that. So, you know, I am instead really urging the federal government to get their act together, put their differences aside, make a deal, keep the government open, and then resolve your political differences once the government is reopened. And I look at the model of Michigan, you see what Governor Whitmer and I were able to do. We had disagreements, we worked it out, we compromised, we funded the state government, and as a result of that, we now have the resources to help the food banks, which have now delivered over 6 million meals across Michigan, and we're going to continue to help their efforts to meet the immediate need as some federal benefits are starting to come back online.
Assuming that you have to go beyond the 30 million, is the first place you would look at pork barrel spending?
Well, I think that's a great place to look. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pork barrel spending. We saw the governor's comments on a podcast recently where, you know, she doesn't like a lot of the pork barrel spending. I certainly don't like it. We reduced it considerably. We reduced it by 87% in the budget. We cut it to about $160 million, but we can certainly look at the pork spending, and that's a great place to start because you start looking at this and saying, some of these projects, what has a better benefit for people, right? The cricket field or feeding people that are very hungry. Hopefully even the Democrats would agree that we should feed people that are hungry over the cricket fields and there were a lot of things in there, wasn't it? I mean, a lot of things that weren't good. All right, any other questions for Dr. Knight? Do you want to say anything, or you covered it?
I'm good. I think.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Knight. We appreciate your partnership. Yep.
Appreciate
And look forward to getting your report next week and continuing to work together to meet this need to feed people across Michigan. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
I wanted him to be able to get out of here so he can keep managing that big distribution network. That was good. So, yeah, and just to talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. Last week we had a joint resolution that the Senate sent over, Senate Democrats. It was not a very good one. We amended it and sent it back to them, and they're not here this week. And what's funny is I came up here and I told you all they weren't going to be here this week. And I thought everybody knew that, but apparently then you guys are like, what? We're not going to, reportedly, they're not going to be here this week. And I told you guys last week, I said they're not going to be here this week. So I read in one of your stories, this was a funny way for the Senate Democrats to cover. They said, well, it's going to be a committee-heavy week. And I said, committee-heavy week? I think that means there's not going to be session because they're not here. How many committees did they have this week? I should get out the, how many do they have? One? I know. What, really? Well, are you counting J-Car? Because that was called by the House. 6? Do you think there were 6? Is that a committee-heavy week? I will see what you guys say in your shows. I don't think that's a committee. It's only a committee-heavy week because they didn't have session. That's not very, I mean, there were probably 6 House committees that met today, if I had to guess. So anyway, a very committee-heavy week in the Senate. So we can't get this joint resolution across. So today we're going to introduce I am going to introduce a House resolution. And you know it's very serious when I introduce it because, we're traditionalists and, Speaker isn't allowed to introduce very many things, and, I push back on that. But we're going to introduce this resolution from me today, calling on the United States Senate to immediately pass a clean continuing resolution to reopen the federal government. You guys look, it's been 36 days. The federal government has been closed. This is the longest government shutdown in the history of the country. And I think we really presented an example of this in the state of Michigan when we put our differences aside. We gave Governor Whitmer a clean continuing resolution. We worked out our political differences, and we funded the government in Michigan. And that is why all of these services are available to people in our state, is because the state government is open. Unfortunately, at the federal level, the federal government is not able to do that, and they're closed, and we're seeing the problems that are starting to come online as a result. I mean, whether it's what we're talking about with the food stamps, or what we're hearing about potential disruptions at Detroit Metro Airport and other airports across the country, where we're going to see reduced flights as a result of the shutdown. We're starting to look at programs like LIHEAP, which is this low-income housing program where the government will help pay energy bills for people in need. We're looking at the WIC program, which provides important benefits to women and infants. And while we're grateful that President Trump has found a way to extend that to December 19, we're starting to look at all these programs and say, this is starting to affect the state. And since the Senate is not here this week, we're just going to take action as the House with this House resolution to call on the United States Senate to pass a clean continuing resolution and to reopen our state government. We really view this shutdown as a punch in the gut to every Michigan worker, every small business owner, and every military family wondering if their next paycheck will come. At the state level, these were issues that we weighed. If we didn't get this problem done at the state level, we were weighing the fact that our state workforce, whether it's our corrections workers or our state police or our people that work at our veterans homes, our teachers, these people potentially were not going to get a paycheck, and they were going to have to work and continue to work without a paycheck. And that was a weight that we all felt at the state level as we were trying to resolve this problem. Is that's difficult to ask your state workers to continue working without a paycheck. I mean, even here in the House, all of my employees that work directly for me would have to continue working without a paycheck. That's a lot of families that were relying on us to get it done. And now we're seeing at the federal level the same problem, but much larger, and that's why we need our U.S. Senators Slotkin and Peters to pass a clean continuing resolution so that we don't see these problems compound with our federal workers. We've seen 14 times our U.S. Senators Slotkin and Peters vote against a resolution, a clean continuing resolution to reopen the government. That is a problem. We need our U.S. Senators Slotkin and Peters to vote to reopen the government. We really feel strongly that reopen the government and then take some time and have your political conversations and work it out and then pass a permanent budget. But as we're seeing these state programs go away, as we're seeing state workers affected, as we're seeing air travel affected, we need to get this government open at the federal level. This is not helping anybody to see this shutdown continue. I think the people of Michigan expect cooperation and problem solving from their elected officials. That's what they're seeing here at the state level with the House Republicans and Governor Whitmer. We need to see that same commitment from our U.S. Senators. Recently we saw the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer say, "Every day gets better for us talking about this shutdown. Well, he certainly was not talking about the people of Michigan. This is not getting better for the people of Michigan. Every day this shutdown is going on, it's getting worse. That's why we're going to take action on this resolution today, calling on the United States Senate to reopen the government by any means necessary. We need a clean, continuing resolution. We need to reopen the government, and then they can resolve their political discussions. Valid points, from many people, but don't leverage our workers, don't leverage our air travel, don't leverage these important government programs over your political differences. Reopen the government and then have the discussions and then solve the problems. That's what we expect out of our U.S. Senators Gary Peters and Alyssa Slotkin, and we're going to pass this resolution today, and we're going to transmit it to them, as well as Chuck Schumer, who really is going to need to read this, because he's not speaking for the people of Michigan when he says every day gets better for us, that's for sure. So we're going to take action on that today, and then I'll just open it up for questions if anybody has any questions about any topics. Yeah, Travers, go ahead. You notice, Travers, you're always the first one. He comes prepared, so.
Thank you. With Rep. Boyer and Rep. Carr introduced yesterday, that they have, I believe, 2 bills that are going to be going through to defund the MEDC. Is that something that you would support back? Is that going to go for a vote?
So my focus right now is on the commitment that I made with Governor Whitmer and Leader Brinks, that we're going to work to try to figure out a solution to economic development in Michigan. We defunded a lot of the business attraction funds. We cut them in half. We defunded SOAR. I'd like to repeal SOAR, repeal the mega credits, which are very bad deals that Governor Granholm made. One example in the mega credits is, GM gets $300 million a year not to lay off 15,000 people. If they lay off 14,000 people, they still get the $300 million a year. That is not a good deal for Michigan. So we need better deals for Michigan. I mean, we value GM. We value many of the companies here that are getting the mega credits, but the deals need to be deals where, the state is getting something for the money they're paying. So I'm really focused on that. I'm not inclined to put these bills up for a vote that they're talking about, but I think when Steve Carra spoke, I think he was clear that we can have differences of opinion within the Republican Party. We gave him a platform to speak about his views. That would have never happened under other speakers, by the way. What other speakers did is if you disagreed with them, they would silence them. I mean, do you remember when Dylan Wegela couldn't get a room because he was going to criticize DTE, so Tate wouldn't let him speak? We had to, I think, there are just a lot of things like that. I mean, some of the other speakers wouldn't let members come out and speak in opposition to things. I want the discussion and the conversation. I know Thomas Albert has a bill package that's 53 bills to dismantle the MEDC. I've not spent my time focusing on what the proper way is to defund the MEDC. What I've been spending my time on, because Governor Whitmer won't do it. I mean, you saw her quote. She said, "I'm not going to do this." So that's why we're focusing on what we can persuade Governor Whitmer on. I mean, if you look at some of the statements that Governor Whitmer makes, some of the changes in her position, I think I'm being pretty effective at influencing Governor Whitmer, working with Governor Whitmer. You see that she signed a budget that defunded SOAR. You see that she signed a budget that cut the business attraction funds in half. She's committed to engaging in a conversation of a new economic development way of doing things in Michigan. So strategically to like throw that aside and then say, I'm going to send you bills to eliminate the MEDC, and she says, I'm going to veto these. That's not the strategy we're pursuing. We're pursuing what can we do now to improve things under Governor Whitmer. And then as a new governor comes in, if their goal is to defund the MEDC or to eliminate the MEDC, then we'll work with them on that. But that's not what we're doing here with this governor. We're taking the MEDC that exists and we're figuring out how do we do economic development within the parameters that we can get done with the current players.
Have you achieved anything as part of this new package?
Well, I think we've agreed to committing to getting something figured out by the end of the year.
Beyond the statement that we want to get something done, have you agreed to any elements of the package per se?
I would say that the staff is meeting, and what they're doing is they're kind of feeling each other out, exchanging ideas, and we continue to get closer and closer. But we're not going to have a deal until Governor Whitmer and I meet and I close that deal. That's when we'll have agreement on elements, and that's not going to be done at the staff level.
So you haven't agreed to anything yet?
Right, but we're coming closer and closer together. We're talking about our ideas. She's talking about her ideas and we're getting closer and closer. And I'm confident we'll land a deal.
What are you getting closest to?
We're getting closest to landing a deal. So when I meet with the governor, I think we'll be able to close that deal very well. And I've done it before, Tim. I've closed many deals with Governor Whitmer. So what you need to do is you need to get the people in the room. They need to have conversations. They need to vet each other's ideas. You move closer and closer together. Then I get in the room with Governor Whitmer. I make the deal, and then we have agreement. Yeah, and then Briggs will perform. Yeah.
You have a bill on the agenda today that would allow for basically the shielding of information of lawmakers, be it addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, stuff like that. And it extends to their spouses and some of their family members. Can you talk about what the impetus is for that, and also like how you handle the fact that there are lawmakers currently, the Secretary of State even, married to lobbyists who have to disclose their employer, but this bill would make it so that they don't have to disclose it. So I guess, have you guys thought this one through fully?
Yeah, that's good. Are you going to report that the Secretary of State's married to a lobbyist? Good. That's interesting. He's not a very good lobbyist, by the way, but he's a lobbyist. Yeah. So, but anyway, but even if he's not a very good lobbyist, he's still a lobbyist. So, it's interesting. Even the very bad lobbyists have to disclose information if they follow the law. And you saw we had to pass a bill last week to force the issue because Jocelyn Benson won't follow the law. And so we had a bill. And it's funny, Dana Nessel recommended the bill to me. I talked to her at Mackinac Conference, the Detroit Chamber Conference, and I just said, I can't believe I'm doing this. But Dana Nessel said, I don't have any way to go after Jocelyn Benson under the law because of this loophole. So the Secretary of State can just break the campaign finance law as many times as she wants, and no one can do anything about it. So we passed that bill out of the House because Jocelyn Benson forced the issue by breaking campaign finance laws. And even Dana Nessel said we need a new law, so we passed it. Now, this case, we have, a judicial version of this that passed the Senate. So the Senate passed a judicial version of this that would allow for withholding the addresses and things of judges. They brought that to us, to the legislature, the judges did, because they're seeing an uptick in the threats toward the judges. I mean, you imagine that you are a judge and you are going to put someone in jail and then they show up to your house. And I think as we saw what's happened in Minnesota with that horrible murder of their former speaker and everything else that happened there. We saw what happened, the terrible thing that happened to Charlie Kirk and his murder, his assassination. So what we're seeing is an uptick in political violence. And I think, you know, as our members are assessing it, they said, okay, look, you know, we're looking at this thing for judges. We should look at this for other politicians too, elected officials, to give them a little more privacy so that somebody can't as easily figure out where they live when they're really angry and go commit an assault or worse. And so that's the way that it's being pursued. It's not a perfect solution. You know, there's a lot of things that you could poke holes in it, of ways that you could probably still get the information. But I do think it'll reduce the, like, if someone really, really, really wants to figure out where one of these elected officials live, they probably can figure it out. But this will help, I think, reduce the ability, particularly if somebody that maybe is acting in a moment of anger, as opposed to somebody who's like really premeditating something. But we have other things that we're putting in place. You saw this bill that moved through the House and will move through the Senate very soon. We have an agreement on it that is going to give the House Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader more ability to deploy security for legislators, for their safety when there's a need. And that's another thing that I've been working on for quite some time. That really built momentum after what happened in Minnesota and then what happened to Charlie Kirk. So when the Senate passes that, we get it to the governor very soon. You know, we're going to have a couple tools here. We're going to have the expanded power of the Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader to utilize their police departments to address threats, to investigate threats, and also to provide more protection to elected officials. And then secondly, as we're moving forward, to shield some of the ways you can get information about where the elected officials live. You know, hopefully that will enhance the security as well.
So if a resident wants to confirm their lawmaker actually lives in the district he represents, they don't have, they wouldn't have access to information to prove that.
I think that, you know, we have to weigh some things here, right? I mean, there's a lot of different values that you have to weigh in any of these public policy conversations. You know, there will be, you know, there's an existing process to confirm the residency of somebody through our election officials. And as you're looking at this, we're trying to weigh the public benefit of, like, a member of the public going and confirming where their legislator lives with the public benefit of protecting elected officials, whether they're judges or other elected officials, from some of these threats and violent issues that have been occurring that are escalating. And as you know, I mean, Secretary of State Benson has been one of the people who's had to deal with this. I mean, Dana Nessel's had to deal with it. Lori Pohutsky's had to deal with it. But there's Republicans that are dealing with this quite a lot. I mean, we saw a group show up to Angela Regis's house recently, a very radical group, you know, and it's not always, the Republicans are not always as vocal about the threats and the people coming to their homes and all the things that are going on as what I'm seeing from the Democrats. But I can tell you, in my position and the information I get as Speaker about threats, I'll just say that there are more threats. They're escalating. And so we're trying to take some measures to ensure the safety of elected officials. And when you do that, there's going to be pros and cons. I see the pro of protecting our elected officials as more valuable than the slight con of, like, I won't as easily be able to figure out my lawmaker's address and drive by their house and confirm they live in the district. Yeah, go ahead, David.
I was wondering if you could talk a bit how much interaction you've had with Mayor-elect Mary Sheffield, and secondly, how open are you to considering some sort of property tax reforms that she's talking about in her campaign and passing legislation to help the city do that?
Right. So I've not spoken to her. I do intend to meet with her in the near future. We've had a great partnership with Mayor Mike Duggan. Worked together with him on a lot of issues to help Detroit, going all the way back to the land value tax, where, if you remember, we made a deal with Speaker Tate, and Speaker Tate said, look, I need this number of votes in order to get this land value tax done. I said, look, I'll do better than that for you. I'll give you more votes than you asked for. And it still failed because of Democrats. You remember that? And Joe Tate could never get that done. Joe Tate said that was his #1 legislative priority when he was Speaker, and he never got it done. Now, my top legislative priorities when I became Speaker was fixing sick leave, tip credit, and getting a local roads fix done. I had 3, and we got all 3 done, and we're not even done with a year, but Tate never got his #1 priority done. Secondly, and so I'll just say, we are, the House Republicans, we're engaging right now in the conversation about property tax reform. I'm open to other people's ideas, but, we're not pursuing, in this situation, just a Detroit solution. We'll certainly take input from the new mayor, the mayor-elect. But, we're pursuing options that benefit the entire state. So, we're going to have conversations with local government leaders, because the way property tax money works is a lot of it goes to the local governments. And we want the local governments to be viable and to be able to provide public safety and the other important government services local governments provide in cities, townships, villages, counties, school districts. But also, one of the top issues that we're hearing from our constituents about is that property taxes are too high. We're seeing the property taxes go up very quickly when Biden was president because of the increase in inflation and the cost of living. That caused property taxes to go up very high multiple years. Now people are really struggling with their property taxes, and they're coming to us and they're saying, we used to think income tax was the biggest issue, but now property tax is a much bigger problem. We're going to be forging consensus and bringing something forward early next year on property tax. We're very interested in the mayor's-elect's perspective and others. I hope that her and I can build the same relationship that we had with Mayor Duggan. I mean, we did the Public Safety Trust Fund, very big for Detroit. And that was another one where it was the Democrats, not the Republicans, it was the Democrats that were blocking millions and millions of dollars to going to fighting gun violence prevention in the cities with the highest crime rate, which happened to all be in Democrat districts. It was the Republicans under my leadership that got that done. And if you talk to the Detroit police chief, who's been here with me at my press conferences in the past, he's so grateful for the partnership, that we honored our commitment to him and the mayor. We got it done. We've done a lot of things for Detroit. We want Detroit to be successful in order to have an even more vibrant state, and we're going to keep working with the Detroit leaders the best we can. So I'm hopeful we get a good relationship with the mayor-elect, and I look forward to meeting with her soon. Other questions?
Mr. Speaker, more of a local question on jobs. As you head home to Richland, you might drive past the GM plant on 69, brand new big battery plant right behind there. Have you heard anything about when that might get staffed up?
Is this, is this the one that GM sold to LG, or is this a different one? Yeah, isn't that amazing? We gave them $666 million of your tax money. It's one of the reasons why we need to reform economic development in the state. And then GM sold their interest to LG and kept the money, of course. And then we saw GM, you know, they took the rest of the money. They were supposed to spend it on an electric battery plant. And then they announced, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to build ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles in that plant. We're not going to retool it after all. We're going to build big Escalades and other things in that plant. But of course they keep the money. You know, hopefully they don't come to us again for their next idea to retool a plant because they've got $666 million from the taxpayers of Michigan they can use for that. We also pay them, like I said, $300 million a year not to lay off 15,000 people. That's a bad deal for the state. We need to make better deals with GM and others. If you're going to bring jobs to Michigan, we welcome it. We want high-paying jobs, higher than the average wage. So we want to come up with neutral criteria. If you create a certain number of jobs above the average wage, you should get some incentive or benefit from Michigan. It should be capped in some way, and any company that meets that criteria should be eligible for the grant and for the tax benefit. Not, we pick GM, we give them $666 million, and we enter into a deal where they can sell their interest to LG and then not perform and keep the money. I don't think anyone knows when this plant is going to open, but you know, we're hopeful that it opens, and we need better deals in the future so we have more certainty when we invest in plants like this in the future as a state. Any other questions? All right, well,
I guess
go ahead,
a
Beth.
follow-up. So with this bill passing, will lobbyists who are married to lawmakers have to still comply with the lobbying law?
I believe so, but you know, that's really a details question that Gideon will have to confirm. But I don't see, and I'm interested to hear your perspective. So from your perspective, why do you think it would prevent a lobbyist from saying where the lobbyist lived?
The legislation exempts the employer name for family members, including spouses. So that legislation says you don't have to list who employs you. The lobbyist legislation says you do have to list who employs you. I don't know which one trumps the other.
So my understanding is the Lobbyist Act would control for the lobbyist, but for Benson's situation, where she's married to a lobbyist, not a good lobbyist, but he still has to register. She would not list his occupation, but my understanding is he would have to list he's a lobbyist on the lobbyist disclosure. That's my understanding, and Gideon can, you know, confirm that after he talks to our policy team. And you know, if you've identified a hole here, well, good. We'll look at it. Yeah, we're still going to vote on it today. Yeah. I mean, we were here till 5 p.m. last week working on an amendment. So I can just hold everybody and do amendments. I do it all the time.
Is there going to be an avenue for the legislature or for the media to double check to see if these legislators are at least 21 years old and live at the residence that is in the district they seek to serve?
Again, we'll have to get into the details with Gideon, but I think that we're weighing different public benefits here, and I think that work will be done by the election administrators. It's pretty interesting now. So now, if you can basically prove that a politician doesn't live in their district, unless you can prove that unless you can really prove that they don't go back there once in a while, it's really hard to win a court case on this. So you know, and I'm not saying that's right, I'm just saying as someone who's run a campaign committee that was aware of Democrats that don't live in their district and saw efforts to try to prove it, I mean, it's almost impossible. There's only one example I know of where it happened. Maybe, you know, if maybe you know, because you've been around, Skubic probably knows other examples. The one example I know of is we had a person running for Portage mayor, and she lived in a house that or she said she lived in a house that literally was like there was no occupancy permit, and you could walk up to the house and see no one could possibly live in this house. That person was thrown off the ballot and actually had criminal charges, but absent that, it's very hard to use that information to prove that someone doesn't live in the district from the media. I think we'll be relying on our election officials to verify that, according to the bill. What's that?
They haven't in the past. I mean, it's been the media who's pointed out that people have been living in two locations or have two homes that they're arguing about. And even if it doesn't succeed in a court case, do the residents have a right to know?
Well, I think, again, I'm acknowledging that there's public benefit to knowing where the elected officials reside. I'm also weighing that against the benefit of protecting our elected officials from threats. And I think the judgment here is the public benefit of protecting the elected officials from threats outweighs the public benefit of reporters and members of the public showing up at politicians' houses to confirm where they live. Granted that both have benefit, I think we're just saying the safety is the bigger issue.
That's what you're going to be saying here is you're going to be telling the people, trust government, government has it under control.
Well, I'm going to vote for the bill today, and I see a lot of public benefit to the bill. You know, there's a similar bill, the judicial bill, and we're going to send this one over to the Senate. We're holding theirs in the House, and you know, there are going to be continued discussions on this and a lot of bills. But let me just remind you guys that are really worried about this, nothing is going to happen until heat gets done. So once heat gets done, you know, then the Senate might move this bill. But I mean, the first thing that's going to happen is heat. The whole ethics, accountability, and transparency plan. And I want to, you know, Lindsay, our chief of staff, says I'm too negative on the press. I don't think I am. I think I'm very fair to the press. But rather than focus on the negative, I'm going to focus on the positive today because Dr. Knight was here and I'm in a good mood. The media has done a much better job of acknowledging that it's the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan, HEAT. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. Slowly but surely, we're acknowledging it's HEAT. We want to see, and I hope that everyone will be as passionate about the problem, which is that the politicians are shoving things in the budget and not disclosing them, and we want to give the public and the media lots of time to vet these programs so that people are getting good value for their tax dollars. So once HEAT moves, then these kind of bills could become law, but not until HEAT moves. HEAT has to move first.
Now, this question's got me wondering, and maybe I'm way off here, could this be a case where now moving that FOIA expansion could be helpful? You could move it with this legislation so that the media still has a way to obtain this information, but then there's that, you know, wall of you need a reason to obtain an address or...
I always really admire your work. That's a real stretch. I give you credit though, but that's a real stretch. I know you guys want FOIA so bad in the press, and you know that's a real jump in logic, but I appreciate you trying. I know you all want it very bad. We're not doing HEAT. We're not doing FOIA. We're just not going to do FOIA. I think people know that, and we ask people all the time, they know HEAT will have much better benefit than FOIA. And the Democrats, we didn't make a deal on FOIA. You know what their top value was? I mean, when push came to shove, right? When you're in a room like I am in these big negotiations, you really learn what people's top values were. Their top value wasn't FOIA. Their top value was shoving pork in the budget. They wanted to shove pork in the budget so bad that they made a signed deal to make heat permanent. Think about how bad they wanted the pork. And then now that the Senate Democrats made this deal, they're like, oh my God, we lost the deal. We lost the deal. We got our pork projects, much smaller than before, only 170 million. But look at what they do. They introduce bills to undo the EV tax, right? We're trying to ensure that EVs pay their fair share, that they pay the same as regular cars. Democrats make that deal. They perform on the budget. What do? They immediately vote to repeal it because, you know, they lost on that. Now the EV taxes are going to be fair in Michigan, where they should be for EVs and plug-in hybrids. The Democrats, you know, they didn't put forward a roads plan, and they said, here's a menu of items that will empower Governor Whitmer to do if you agree to any of them. I said, okay, you're not going to do one? Well, then we'll pick off your list. We'll do marijuana. What do? They introduce a bill to change that immediately after. I mean, it's too bad the Democrats got a bad deal, but they didn't ask for FOIA. They cared about the pork. You can see, I went into that conversation. I didn't put a single pork project in the budget. I said, my value is HEAT, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan, and bringing disclosure to the pork spending so we may get real value for people's tax dollars. That's the value I brought. I got it in the deal. And now they're annoyed because the pressure's off and they're looking at the deal, and the Democrats are saying, wow, the Republicans really ate our lunch on this deal in this budget, working with Governor Whitmer. We empowered them, but man, this was a bad deal for the legislative Democrats. So they didn't ask for FOIA, they asked for pork. And unfortunately, they got pork way too much. But, you know, Mr. Skubik has an idea. Maybe we'll go relook at some of that pork when we're finding more money to help with these benefits for the food banks and other things, as we're plugging a lot of these problems caused by Peters and Slotkin, as they won't vote for a clean continuing resolution to reopen the government. If we do have to draw from somewhere to replenish our food banks and the other things we have to do to patch these holes during the shutdown, the pork spending, that's the first place we should look. All right, well, thank you. I don't know what time it is. Yeah, maybe I have to go work on some amendments. I don't know, but I should probably get to session. Thank you again to the press. All right.